Thank you for tuning in to Rise Above TV, where we are empowering humanity and supporting unity. You're watching Cracking the Codependency Code with relationship coaches Janie Terrazas and Barry Selby.
So is one the loneliest number?
That is what we'll ponder today.
Indeed.
On this video of Cracking the Codependency Code. So let's get right into it.
Let's talk about being single. That's what I'm talking about here.
Perfect.
There's a belief somehow, and having been a single relationship coach for quite a while, being looked upon as being a relationship coach who's single, there's some sort of judgment that you're not perfect, you're not whole because you're single. There's a belief about that somewhere. I don't think it's just in here. I think it's out there. Anyway.
Yeah. Thank God it's now out here and
Right.
no longer in there. We talked about that in the last episode.
The recognition for most of us is that, and it has changed. I believe actually our culture has shifted in the last few years. There's a different thing, experience coming through. Because for a long time it was kind of, the rule was you had to get married, have kids, settle down. It was the American dream particularly. Mm-hmm. And so the idea of being single, being alone for any extended period of time, there was something wrong with you. If you can't be in a relationship, what's wrong with you? That was kind of the phrasing that was going on. Now, my parents said that to me a few times, so I understand for certain times we get influenced by our parents. But the thing about this being single is a lot of people are wired to believe that when you're single, you should be lonely. Because if you don't have somebody around you, how can you feel okay? That when there's someone else in your life, then you feel great. But when you're on your own, you feel empty. Now, we talked in a previous video about the puppet master thing. And this is kind of a similar place where basically you don't feel like you have everything you need, you don't feel whole and complete, just on your own. However, my belief and what I've learned over the years and what I teach my clients is that actually the best way to be in a relationship is when you're already whole yourself. As I said in the previous video, the relationships are not 50-50, they're 100-100. Well, if you think you're not complete on your own, then you're not believing you're 100% yourself. Mm-hmm. And the true expression of our sense is that it's okay to be alone, because my brains were down. Being alone and being lonely are two different things. Because being alone is just the state of being on your own. Being lonely is an emotional feeling that you don't have everything to be okay.
Yes, like you're missing something.
Right. And one of the biggest, and I've talked about so many times, is almost ad nauseum, is that we tend to think that love is out there only. And when you recognize, when you learn how to master the game, so to speak, of falling in love with who you are, then loneliness goes away and it's okay to be alone. In fact, the secret sauce, so to speak, of when you start to love yourself is you start to become more attractive for the opposite sex or the partner you want to attract.
Yeah.
Because the thing about it is codependency is one of the, and it's funny how this works. My experience is the codependency, when it was in my life and in my actions, made me more repulsive to my partners. Because what was happening was that codependency showed up and appeared as a neediness. That I needed something to, like, I needed them to make me feel okay. Mm-hmm. So most of us have a pattern when we go out on dating, we appear to be okay. We want to be all together. So we meet somebody, we hide that codependent hunger, that vampiric need for that person to make us feel okay, until you're in a relationship and then the walls come down. Mm-hmm. Been there, done that?
Yes.
Yeah. So what it comes back to is that we have not been trained, educated, informed, or learned how to love ourselves first. And in fact, in some conversations, and particularly with men, loving ourselves, there's something wrong with that. It's too soft to do that. Yet I believe, frankly, for all of us, men and women, gay or straight, whatever preference you have, loving yourself first is a fundamental way to have a healthy life, a healthy support system, and a healthy outlook on relationships out there as well.
Yes, and defining that love, because people is like, oh, I love myself, and there's this sort of like arrogant, narcissistic loving of thyself. But what we're talking about is nurturing yourself in a way that shows that you love yourself, and part of that is creating healthy boundaries and diving into some of your trauma and going into what's called the adverse childhood experience test, taking an ACE test, and seeing some of these things about self. Because like you said, there's a piece of us that's whole and that's lovable and that's capable of loving. And there's been things that may have happened to us that sort of disconnected us from that. But that thing that breathes life into our body, that thing that we are first and foremost is love. And the world has conditioned us to believe that you have to find love, and that love is outside of yourself,
Right.
and that even God to some degree is like outside of yourself. And we've now come to understand what love actually is, that it's not just an emotion, it's a way of being. Love is a verb, it's an action. For me, it was really figuring out how to become my own beloved. That's basically what he's saying, right? And what does it mean to be my best friend? Like, I had to really define friendship, and what does a healthy, solid friendship look like and sound like and feel like? And then how do I have that with myself as much as I possibly can? And the more you flex that and practice that and do that, you realize, I enjoy my own company.
There you go.
After my split with my ex, there was so much anxiety that was rising to the surface. And there was this piece of me that was like, get on an app, get on those dating apps. And it's like, get out there right away and stuff like that, you know? And there was a moment where I had entertained it just because I was like, well, I need to just date. I'm just gonna go. I'm not really looking for anything, but I'm just gonna date. And so I use it as more of a psychological experiment. But even though I was going into it from that perspective and with that awareness, and because I had already learned a lot of this stuff, that's when I started realizing how powerful the subconscious mind is, that underlying piece of us that we're operating from, that's kind of like autopilot, because I could sense, and I call that feeling that my ego will say, or my shadow, or my inner child, or whatever, right? I could sense and hear what it was wanting me and trying to get me to do. And then I got curious as to why that was happening, and then I had to go against the grain to not, and I had to sit in that. It's almost like in another episode we were talking about getting comfortable saying no.
Yeah.
When I was getting that desire to do that, and there's nothing wrong with getting on dating apps and all that stuff after a breakup. It's just really after a split, you do need to take some time to yourself and maybe even get some help, where you can kind of reflect on all of your relationships, maybe, and that relationship with your parents and all that stuff, so that you don't have to repeat that cycle. And if you take that work seriously, that's when you really start to develop that wholeness and that centeredness and that balance and feeling comfortable, not having anybody. For me, I realized it's like, why do you really want to be with someone? Like, why? What's that thing? For me, part of it was a touch. It was like this affection. But I think it was also, I love nurturing.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt having a relationship made it really easy for me to flex that. So if I don't have a child and I don't have a partner, and that's when I started realizing, oh, all that nurturing that you're wanting to extend, how do you bring it to this person?
Right.
How do you get so badass? Look how you take care of other people. Take care of yourself like that, sister. And I was like, oh.
And this is the thing, once you said at the beginning, I want to
Yeah, please.
expose a little bit more, is that there's a presumption that when you love yourself, it's somehow it's a selfish act.
Right.
And so there is this thing that people think, well, I shouldn't be loving myself because that's going to be egotistical and I start being like too full of myself.
Yeah.
Not what I mean.
No.
The ego is really neck up, and self-love is including all of us, so that's a little differentiation.
Mm-hmm.
Self-love means that when we take care of ourselves, like we said in previous talks about keeping better agreements, about saying no to things, about honoring who we are, about not being tied to somebody else's emotional feelings. Self-love is an incredible tool to actually break the codependent cycle. Probably one of the biggest tools I recommend because it's so easy when you do it the right way. Because self-love as a tool, as a vehicle, as an expression, is the most underrated, and downplayed experience I think we have on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we, as you said before, like, you know, having a relationship with God's Spirit out there, externalizing all of this stuff, when my belief structure, thankfully, because I've been on this path a long time in spiritual work, is that God isn't out there, God's within.
Mm-hmm.
So if God is within us, then why will we not love and appreciate and take care of this vehicle that God is within?
Mm-hmm. And also, too, they say God is love, and if God is inside of us, and God is love, then that means love is inside of us.
Yes.
And you don't have to earn it.
Right.
It just is. It is our inheritance simply for being born. The whole point is to remember that and then return to that and then operate and live life from that space.
And part of self-love is really comes down to how do you take care of yourself?
Yeah.
So you say, well, self-love is going to make me, I'm going to go to the gym and work out 7 days a week. I was talking about this one before too. The truth is, it might be self-love is that you don't go to the gym 7 days a week. You go 3 days a week and you eat more like you want to. So you, like some people like go on rigid diets and they're going to go like strict, like greens only, whatever it is. Well, self-love could be that you have compassion for yourself when you don't do it perfectly, because part of what self-love includes is having compassion for yourself. And as human beings, we tend to make mistakes. Sorry to break it to you, but we tend to make mistakes in life. We don't keep our agreements, or we fall through on something, or we make a mistake with something, we do something wrong, and then we spend 6 years judging ourselves for it. Loving yourself is compassionate. Loving yourself is a place where you can actually be okay with, oh crap, I didn't do that right. Let me do it better next time. So it's not ignoring it or going, yeah, I made a mistake, so what? It's about having compassion and love for yourself, so that when you do things that work for you, when they don't work for you, you go, oh, okay, I understand that. Do more of what works, do less of what doesn't work. And of course, knowing the difference is one of the keys. So self-love is a vital part, I believe, of autonomy, of self-respect. And in fact, I've done a lot of work, and I talk about this in a lot of my work, with all the self-work, self-confidence, self-trust, self-alignment, self-esteem, self-acceptance, self-care, all these things, they all come from self-love. So it is a game changer when you start practicing it.
Yeah, it really is your saving grace. The biggest gift you can give yourself is to have a real relationship with yourself, REAL. And what REAL is really about, it's again another acronym, you know me and geeking out on acronyms, but it's about understanding what it means to live responsibly. What that in itself could be several episodes of a series just on its own.
Yes.
Like, what does it mean to be responsible? What does it mean to have empathy? What does it mean to have accountability? And what does it mean to be loyalty? What are you loyal to? And we have to learn how to be loyal to ourselves. All those self-words that he used, self-awareness, self-compassion, a lot of those you cannot extend to another person unless you can fully extend them to yourself.
Right.
You cannot extend anything to the degree that you're able and willing to give it to yourself. And so always keep that in mind, when you're going through this process. And being real is about being authentic, and it's about being raw. And that's ultimately what we're wanting to encourage people to do, is not be ashamed of who you are. Get curious about why you are the way you are, and more importantly, discover what you are, which is L-O-V-E. L-O-V-E.
And this is the thing, it is an easy way to access those places inside yourself. I created for my clients a self-love guided meditation. So on my website you can get it. I actually have audio meditations built into it as well. You can get the whole product.
Love it.
But basically it's a simple practice, and if you just spend 5 minutes a day in the morning and 5 minutes a day in the evening, practicing self-love with yourself, really taking care of yourself, nurturing yourself. If you did that for 30 days, because it takes 30 days to install a new habit, it will change your life.
Absolutely.
Simple and effective way of changing your life is loving yourself first.
Yes, and so I highly recommend you, again, remember we're always talking about offering techniques and tips and tools, so whatever you're getting from these videos, it's great, but there's other resources that we have available for you guys. One of the things that I have is called the 7 Positive Daily Habits. Simple things that you could do in less than 10 minutes that I do on the regular, just to kind of help you get into that state of mind and also that state of love, because they're all very loving and kind gestures. And one of them is as simple as giving gratitude, or move your body for 5 minutes a day, breathe and be still for 2 minutes a day, things like this. And there's all this scientific data that backs up a lot of these positive daily habits, and that's included in when you go and get my Know Thyself Jumpstarter kit. It's one of the things that you get along with it. So go check that out, and thank you again, Barry. This has been really awesome.
One simple thing I can say that you're loving yourself is, if you've been watching these videos, that's a self-loving act, because you're learning tools and techniques to free yourself from codependency so you can be whole in yourself. That is a self-loving act.
That's a perfect way to wrap it up.
There you go.
Wrapping up another episode. Thank you so much for loving yourself and growing and checking out our series here, Cracking the Codependency Code.
We'll see you again soon.
Be sure to like and follow Rise Above TV for more mindful content.